Greetings. Welcome to Lit with Lloyd. I am your host, Lloyd Russell. I want to give a shout out to KCAT for hosting our podcast. And tonight, we've got a romance author who has written a bunch of books that I want to talk about. Her name is Eva Moore, and welcome to the podcast, Eva.
Thanks so much for having me, Lloyd.
Okay. First question. Is it true that the inspiration for you becoming an author was a baby?
In a roundabout way, yes. When I was newly Californian, we moved when I was pregnant with my second. So I had a 3-year-old and an infant. Knew no one. Had no friends or family out here.
Wow.
Very isolated. With a husband who had just started working at that fruit company over in Cupertino, 100 hours a week. So I was very much trapped in a baby-centric environment. And I needed something. I needed something to think about. And I had this dream, and it was the bleak moment from a story. I thought, oh, that was really good. Wait, I haven't read that one. That's not a book I read. And it happened again and again and again. I'm like, oh my God, I need to sleep. I can't not sleep. I have got to get this dream out of my head. So I wrote it down on a piece of paper, and I thought, oh, but who are these people? Who are these characters? This is kind of interesting. And so then every time that I was folding laundry or washing dishes or scrubbing up whatever was on the floor, I could go to that place in my head and think about the story. And then the most wonderful thing happened. My oldest daughter started preschool. And so one morning a week, I had her at preschool and a sitter for the baby. And in the course of a year, I wrote my very first novel, Someone Special.
Wow. That's great. And I mean, you have 3 kids, right?
I do.
And you've written a number of books with them being young. I mean, how did you do that? With just babies basically the same way you just described it?
Very similar. Very similar. I have always been a big proponent of making time for what gives you joy. And my husband has always understood that there is going to be some time that mommy needs to not be mommy and have something that can feed her mind, can keep her happy, can bring her joy. And so whether it was when we were living in Singapore or when we were, just newly moved back with an infant, we've always found time for me to grab a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there to play with the stories, to make them shine. And now that all 3 of my girls are full-time in school, it's much easier.
Understandably.
Yeah.
When you described, having ideas that just popped in your head, were they for romance novels specifically?
Oh, absolutely. This has been my genre of choice since I was about 12.
Really?
I love a good love story. And if I'm going to invest 4 to 6 hours of my life in a story, I need there to be a happily ever after at the end. I don't need my main characters dying. That's not why I'm here. I have enough stress in my real life. I need that happily ever after. And so when child rearing and babies meant that I couldn't sit with a book and focus, the stories that my brain wanted to keep coming back to are those with a happy ending.
Well, I guess there's a reason why approximately 50% of all books written are romance, correct?
Not surprising, yes.
Some kind of number like that?
It's the last time I heard statistics, we made up 1/3 of all books sold.
Okay, I thought it was even higher than that, but still.
It may be, yeah.
Wow.
It is a tested and true genre, and the people who read them know what they're getting, and that's why we flock to them.
Well, and regardless of which kind of romance it is, romance, contemporary romance, historical romance, suspense romance, there's almost always a happy ending.
It's incredibly diverse. And no matter what other things you like, if you like horror, there's horror with romance in it. If you like thrillers, there's thrillers with romance. I mean, you can find romance in just about every subgenre. It's fantastic.
So when you say approximately third of the books written or sold, that I'm sure that doesn't include the other genres where there is still romance in them. That's probably now about 75%.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Okay. How long did it take you to actually write that first book?
About 9 months.
Okay.
From start to finish on a first draft.
And what did you do with it when you were done, if anything?
It sat in my computer for many years. I didn't do anything with it, Lloyd. When I actually, that's not true. I finished the first draft. I gave it an editing pass, and I said, by my 35th birthday, I'm going to be a published author. And on my 35th birthday, I put it up on Amazon. No professional editing, homemade cover. It was terrible. And within probably 6 weeks, I pulled it back down. But I was a published author by my 35th birthday. And then I wrote the next book and the next. And as I was starting the fourth, I was working through the story, and I was having trouble with motivation, getting it written. Because again, this was when the youngest was about 2. And I joined a contest called Finish the Damn Book. And it was
That's the name of the contest?
That was the name of the contest. And it was just a group of people who were going to hold you externally accountable. And so I signed up, I did my check-ins, and I finished the book. And so I was able to tell her, hey, I finished. Isn't this great? So she put all of the people who finished, she put their names in a hat. Mine was the one she drew.
Oh my gosh.
And I got a professional cover. I got a professional edit by a 20-year veteran editor at Harlequin.
Oh, wow.
A marketing campaign. I mean, the works to launch this book that I had finished. And then I said, oh, but it's book 4 in a series. And books 1, 2, and 3 have not been edited. Do not exist in the world. What do I do? And so over the course of 6 months, I edited 4 books concurrently and released them January, February, April, May of that year.
You did your own editing?
I hired a friend of mine is a local editor. She's my friend now. At the time, I was just like, she was an editor who said, yes, I can help you. And she helped me edit the first 3. And I edited the 4th with the woman from Harlequin. So, yeah,
wow.
It was a roller coaster start.
All right. So now you have 4 books that are edited. Mm-hmm. And how did they get published? How did you publish them?
I am self-published.
You are?
I am.
And was that something that you've just done since the get-go?
Well, when I put book 1 out for that 35th birthday, for that very brief period of time, that book was considered officially published. And so when I knew more and said, okay, well, maybe I'll try and find an agent. Maybe I'll try and go the traditional publishing route. Well, we can't take that because it's already been published. Can we forget that you wrote that and make book 2, book 1, and you just start from there? And I said, it's my first book. It's my baby. I can't forget that I wrote it. And nobody was willing to take on a book mid-series. So I thought, you know what? That's fine. I'm just going to go at my own pace and I'll do it myself. And with the ups and downs of our lives, it has been a blessing to not be under an external contract for anything. When COVID shut everything down in March of 2020, and I suddenly had 3 children home, I didn't have a contract. And that was a very good thing because I was full-time mom, full-time teacher. I couldn't write. The Caught a Vibe, this story, I started it in December of 2019. And I got like the first 2 chapters written, and then the pandemic hit.
Wow. And
that's how it became a quarantine book, because I was suddenly writing through the quarantine. But it took me 2 years from the time I started writing it to actually get it to print, because I couldn't work. So
Of course.
yeah.
So you wrote one book in the first couple of years of the pandemic, and then things obviously have loosened up a bit.
Yes, thank goodness.
And the kids are back in their respective schools. And so do you, with the kids all out of the house, do you have a set schedule for writing?
I do. I actually have a writing hack that I stumbled into because of the pandemic, and it has served me ridiculously well. In 2020, I discovered this little app called TikTok. Very entertaining. 30 seconds at a swipe. I loved it because it was about what I could focus on in between somebody needing a snack and somebody losing their pencil and, and as I tend to do with social media that I enjoy, I began to think, well, how could I create? What could I give back to the app? And instead of doing the smart thing, which would have been, hey, I write books, you should read them. What I ended up doing was, hey, I write books, I can give you writing advice. And so I started this series, and I had a writing tip that went mildly viral. And so all of a sudden I had all of these writers following my TikTok page. And I thought, okay, a lot of these are new writers. They've got time to write because it's the pandemic and they're all just getting started. I can share my newbie writer stuff. And so we talked about doing Pomodoro sprints where you write for 20 minutes, break for 5, write for 20, break for 5. And then I started going live on TikTok and running sprints for an hour. And I do it twice a day. I'm currently not, because I have a torn disc in my back, which makes sitting for long periods really painful. Sorry. But the normal schedule is 10:30 to noon and then 8 until 10:30 at night. And people tune in on their phone. They find my live on TikTok. I keep their phone focused on writing. They keep my phone focused on writing. And in the last, let's see here, we've been going 2.5 years. We just cleared our 10 million word mark.
Wow.
10 million words written together as a group.
Well, speaking of a group, I mean, you had a situation that's certainly much more difficult than most, because since you moved to an area where you didn't know anybody, you didn't have other writers that you could really get with. But I know that you are now part of an author group.
I am.
How long did it take before you were able to put that together, and how did you do it?
So I found the Silicon Valley romance writers. I want to say it was right about that time that I was in the contest, because that's where I found my editor. And I had been going for maybe a year at that point. But I just looked up writers groups. I was like, the Bay Area has millions of people.
Yes.
Surely there are writers getting together. And I had done NaNoWriMo. And so I knew there were write-ins in certain places, but that was, at the time, that was largely just in November. And so I thought, I'm gonna Google it. And so I found Silicon Valley Romance Writers. It has since disaffiliated from the Romance Writers of America group, and is now Golden State Romance Writers, for anyone who would like to join. We meet the last Saturday of the month from 9 to noon. The first hour is like networking and catching up and talking about stories that you're having trouble with. And then there's a professional aspect where we invite an author or an editor to come give a presentation on something that would benefit the group. For example, this Saturday, we're getting a talk from Philip Duncan about email marketing. So having that core group of writer friends that I could lean on has been one of the best things for my career. I know we ran into you over at Laboo.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute.
There are write-ups write-ins in person, but the meetings since the pandemic have all been virtual. So we have members in LA, up in Seattle, who still come to our local writing group because that's where their connections are.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
understand.
lovely.
That's great. All right, we're going to have to take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment with Eva Moore.
Thank you to the City of Montessorino for their continued support of KCAT Public Media. The City of Montessorino has enabled KCAT to inspire, educate, entertain, and inform our community through the magic of television and digital media for over 38 years. Thank you.
And we are back with Eva Moore talking about how she became a romance writer and how are things going today. Okay, welcome back.
Thank you.
So, a couple of things. You mentioned right before the break that we ran into each other accidentally when you were with a writers group. Hannah Jane was like maybe the third podcast that I had.
Really?
And it was well before we started with video. It was just audio at the time.
Oh, that's wild.
And I've known her for many years.
She was the president of Silicon Valley RWA when I joined.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I know her, and I've known her for years.
And you mentioned, that you have people that are in different parts of the country. We have a book club out of Recycle Bookstore in Campbell.
Oh, lovely.
And it's been going on since 2014. Prior to the pandemic, the author always came to the store. But since the pandemic, we now have members from around the country. So we're going to stick with the Zoom for the same thing you're talking about, because we don't want to exclude people that are part of it.
Yeah. And it's so, I'm really glad that people were able to embrace that level of technology, because it just makes it so much easier to make things more inclusive.
Yeah.
Even if we do have an in-person meeting, we still have the Zoom screen up and running so that people can participate from farther away.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the few, benefits of this rotten thing. All right, let's talk about your books. I know you've written several series. Mm-hmm. I'm particularly curious about the one that says worst ever. Is that what it says? Worst ever anthology? So tell us about the 3 series. You already indicated that you had written 4 books in a series. Where did that series go, and how did you establish other series?
So the first series, like you said, it's 4.5 books. It's the Girls' Night Out series, and I based it around a group of girlfriends and their mutual support of each other as they find love in the modern world. The anthologies were put together by my friend Kilby Blades. It's the worst holiday ever and the worst Valentine's Day ever. She said, everybody's putting out all of these real sappy anthologies for Christmas. I want more holidays. I want more laughter. I just want it to be more. So I wrote 2 stories for that, which are the second one is unrelated. The first one is actually an extended epilogue for the first book in my second series. I mentioned there's a half book at the end of the first series. The hero in that book is related to the family in the second series. So it's kind of a bridge story there. The second series was inspired by my time in Singapore. When I was so homesick, I would binge watch HGTV for hours just to see home. See home.
Yep.
And everyone on this side of the world was asleep when I was awake. So it's very hard to actually connect with people in person. So HGTV, Chip and Joanna Gaines, big fan. And so I started to wonder, what's it going to be like for them in, say, 20 years when their kids are ready to take over the business. And I started to mull that over in my mind. I thought, this could be really fun. And so I wrote the Exposed Dreams series, and it is a fictional HGTV style show set in the Bay Area. It's called $1 Million Starter Home, which only Bay Area folks get.
Of course.
And it's this family whose oldest son has died as a soldier off at war, didn't come back home, and that has thrown the entire family into kind of tumult around, well, who's going to run it now? It was always going to be Gabe, and now it can't be. And so each member of the family is re-examining their role and what they want to do and how they're going to carry on their family legacy, as well as dealing with all of the antics that come from being part of a reality TV show.
That's what editing is for.
Sorry, didn't mean to knock the mic. So I wrote those 3 books thinking I was done with that series. And then I had readers come back and say, okay, but we need to know that their parents are okay. Because in the background, their parents' marriage is on the decline as they both are struggling with their grief and how to deal with having lost a child, an adult child. And I swear I had tied it up real nice and neat at the end of book 3. And they were all like, no, we need more. And so book 4 eventually got written. And it is retracing the parents' love story from their beginnings, interspersed with their scenes from the first 3 books, but told through their perspective. So it got a little twisty, but I love it.
I think that's great. What are you working on now? Is it part of a series or is it a standalone?
That is a very good question.
Or book 1 of another series?
Bingo. While I love Caught a Vibe, and it was supposed to be the first book in a new series, the subsequent books are indefinitely postponed. Mostly because I can't think about more pandemic stuff right now. And with my semi-enforced rest time from writing, my brain has started percolating new and exciting things. So I am considering doing a dual timeline series where some of the books are written in the 1920s in a fictional Hearst castle, and the other books are written in the current time as contemporary small town romances in the town at the base of the castle. And it's the interplay between the generations and like the descendants from this group who still live in the town finding love stories that kind of mirror what their great-great-grandparents did.
Whoa. Are the back and forth within the same books?
Not sure yet. What I'm thinking is it's probably going to be easier to write like the 1920s bundle and then have the contemporary bundle come out separately, but have them be linked in the backstories.
Okay, just one person's opinion.
Yeah.
I love the back and forth in a book.
I do too.
You just don't think it can work.
The cast of characters that I have is a little unwieldy in my head right now. So unless I manage to cull it down drastically, I think it'll work better as like 2 concurrent series.
Yeah. I feel like I've read a lot of romances. We have a lot of romance authors in the area. I don't know if I've ever read a romance that had 2 different timelines. And I understand why that may not work for you, but I think that is such an interesting idea.
Well, I did the 2 different timelines in in the last book of the Exposed Dreams series. It's called Reclaimed Dreams. And so you have the current stories, but then you have like the flashbacks to the 1960s and 70s and 80s. Okay. And I had originally written it chronologically and just thought, oh God, it's not working. Why isn't it working? And my lovely editor, the same one who helped me with that first series, she said, write it all out. So I put each scene on a card and she said, okay, now this goes here and these go here. And she just rearranged them all into time slips. And I was like, oh, it works. Oh, it works. So I had to write like 6 more scenes to make everything balanced. But but trying to think that way, my brain was not having it. So I'm not saying it won't turn into a dual timeline for this new series, but right now my brain is leaning towards chronological.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think your brain is what counts, actually. So that's good. All right. So where does this one come up?
So that is book 1 in the Exposed Dreams series.
Okay.
So that's the eldest daughter of the family who has gone to school to be a designer. The mom has completely stepped back and is like, none of our time is guaranteed. I'm not spending any more time stuck in this office. I'm out. And so the running of the construction office kind of falls on the daughter's shoulders. And resentfully, she carries it, but she really wants to design. And so when her father drops the bomb that they're going to be doing this reality show, she's like, this is my chance. I can do the designs. Unfortunately, her father's head contractor is also thinking, this is my chance. I'm going to prove that I can do this, and then I'll get to run the business. And they delightfully butt heads until they fall in love.
Which, of course, they will. Have you given any thought to possibly getting an agent and maybe seeing if there are any publishers out there, or are you completely happy with the self-publish?
That's a very interesting question, because had you asked me in July of 2019, when I went to New York City for the RWA conference, my answer was absolutely, I will have an agent by the end of the year. And then the pandemic hit.
True that.
And I thought, oh, thank God I don't have an agent breathing down my neck for anything, because I can't. I'm not saying I will never be traditionally published. I think at some point I will write the series that will benefit from having that kind of representation. I don't think I'm there yet. And the current state of publishing in general and romance in specific makes it extremely hard for new authors to break in.
Even with the long list of books that you've written.
I would say that for those of us who have a long backlist of indie published books, unless we were a breakout hit like Colleen Hoover, that actually works against us, because they can look at my sales and say, oh, well, you only sold this, so we don't think you're going to be the next Colleen Hoover.
Uh-huh.
Whereas I don't have a marketing department. I am my marketing department.
Right.
I am my publicity department. So
yeah.
It's kind of a double-edged sword there. For right now, the indie publishing is working for me. I'm not going to say that I'm never going to go trad, but for the moment, I'm happy.
Yeah, I understand that. And you retained the professional editor for all your books?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
I have a developmental editor who I was telling you about, and then I have a separate copy and proofreader.
Absolutely. Okay, and obviously you're not writing now
Right.
like you normally would. Do you have a sense of when your next book will come out?
Well, I have surgery next week, so fingers crossed this is the answer to the sciatic pain I've had since May.
Oh, boy.
But if all goes well, I should be able to start writing again late March, early April. And I have a retreat planned in April. I'm going to Las Vegas with some other authors, and we're going to crank out some words. I am hoping that by September, October of this year, I'll have something new to play with.
And will it be a new series? I mean, we talked about that a moment ago. So
Yeah.
You're going to do that new series with the double time frames, but in separate books.
Correct.
All right.
I have a couple of stories that are in progress that I had to kind of walk away from when I couldn't sit anymore. And I don't want to lose the work that I've done on those, so they will shift locations and become part of this new series in the contemporary portion.
Great. Okay. Well, the other series that you've done, are those done?
The first two are complete and finished. Caught a Vibe is currently a standalone and will probably be a standalone for a while.
Will anybody convince you to do another book in your worst ever anthology series?
If Kilby brings together another anthology, I will absolutely write for her. She is a delight to work with. But that is not in my control.
Okay. Well, first of all, we certainly hope that the surgery goes smoothly and that you are writing again very soon.
Thank you.
I've had a chance to read one of your books, Caught a Vibe. I enjoyed it a lot. I told you I was going to get to the other one. I haven't, but I have it, so at least I can. I want to thank you for coming. It's just been a real pleasure to have you, and I'm looking forward to following your career.
Thank you so much, Lloyd. This has been fun.
Good. Okay. All right. So we're closing the book on today's podcast. I want to thank KCAT again. It's always great working with KCAT's tech people who always have an opportunity to edit things that I've said during the podcast. And if you want to see any of our previous podcasts, then I'm going to try to speak English pretty soon, then you can go on lloyd.show/YouTube, and that'll get you a bunch of podcasts to be able to watch. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.
You just heard Lit with Lloyd here on KCAT Radio. Explore all our KCAT original programming at kcat.org/radio.